Good morning. I think we have listened quite a lot to all kinds of issues about the Greater Bay Area. But the Greater Bay Area is not alone. It's not isolated. It's linked up actually with the One Belt and One Road initiative of the Chinese government. The Belt and Road are supposed to be one for the overland route, one for the maritime route. But in fact, they are linked together. In the past, I think in the Asian Silk Road, there's no division between the land and sea, but rather they have a level system that joins every countries along the route, extending to not only to Asia and Europe, but also to Africa and even to America. So when we see the Belt and Road initiative nowadays, we should not see just as a Chinese initiative, just a link between China and Europe, but rather we should see in a more historical perspective. It's a link of countries in a network system that extend far beyond China and Europe. And that's not only trade between China and Europe, but also trade and exchanges among all the countries involved. So this is the reason why China stated it as an initiative, so that every countries can join and participate and develop. I have two observations about the Belt and Road initiative. One is that it's not just about the famous and rich countries and firms. I think the Belt and Road initiative extends to many countries, and many of them have been ignored or isolated in the past 1 or 2 centuries, ignored by the multinational corporation because they may not return a very high current profit rate. But they are a quick civilization. They are quick countries. And the revival of the Belt and Road initiative is just trying to link them up together, provide a platform. And China take the lead to invest or to promote all these kind of development projects. Means that they would like other countries to be involved, not just as a kind of outbound investment strategy of China, but rather it's a more global enterprise of mutual development. Actually, we can say that it's more like the UN's alliance of civilizations, so that people can contribute and survive and prosper together. The other thing is that Hong Kong Hong Kong, together with Greater Bay Area, have been immersed very much in the advanced country world. So we are also talking about Europe, about America, where we have been, although Hong Kong come from developing countries, development economy in the past, but it seems that we have lost sight of the other not so favorable developed kind of countries. So in the previous session, we talked about high tech or about innovation. They are all good for Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. But the success of China in its industrialization is not just geared to the American or European market. Rather, China has a very strong competitiveness in the sense that it can provide goods and services at different levels. They can compete at different levels. And in fact, China's trade has been very huge in the world, having a large percentage. And it's not just for the America or for Europe. So what it means that the Belt and Road initiative link up China and other countries together, and actually it provide a platform for further industrialization and economic development of these countries. So in the coming year, actually we can see already in the last few years, but in the coming year we can see more the further development of these countries. And it's not just limit to the advanced country, but rather it's the large scale of countries. And they may not engage only at the high-tech and more expensive value-added products, but rather they will have a full range of development that may be much more important than the high-tech industries world. So I will emphasize very much that the Belt and Road is a more international kind of a global adventure of all the countries involved, not just for investment, but a large corporation for higher profit return. And in this sense, Mr. Animov gave us a very good introduction. Hong Kong Russian language had not been so popular in Hong Kong in the past, but we had to learn the world is not just an English world. We had to learn the world consists of other civilizations, other systems. So we will, if you emphasize the Bay Area, we have more competitors in the world. We should reach out more beyond the English world. And as Mr. Animov said, the SOC countries are becoming a very strong force in the world, the international trade and others. So in Hong Kong, if you want to engage Hong Kong, to redevelop Hong Kong as a financial center, or even for a service center, or even a industrialization, we need to look at the international world beyond the English world. So without further ado, I would like to ask our panelists to talk about their various perspective about the international approach to Belt and Road concentrated in Hong Kong. So the first speaker is Mrs. Regina Yip. She is the co-director of, co-chairman of the Maritime Trade.
Thank you, Thomas. Thanks to Joseph for showing us the video on Hong Kong people's response to the Belt and Road. We have seen that a lot of young people still do not know enough about the Belt and Road Initiative. But actually, Hong Kong has historically played an important part in China's maritime trade, dating back to the Han Dynasty. Starting almost at the same time as the Silk Road on the land side. According to the Tang Dynasty, according to a Tang Dynasty historical chronicle, from Tang Dynasty, Hong Kong, in fact, is Tuen Mun, was part of the outer port of Guangzhou, which was a leading port along the ancient maritime Silk Road. So historically, we have always played a very important role as a supporting port for the maritime Silk Road. And currently, Hong Kong, I think, continues to play a very important role because I think our strength is definitely on the maritime side, although the institute that I founded, the Maritime Silk Road Society, I'm pleased to report to Ambassador Alimov that we do offer courses on Russian. And we have no lack of admits who are interested in learning more about the Russian language and Russian culture. But definitely, Hong Kong has a lot of strength on the maritime side. Firstly, because we are a maritime economy. We are a maritime economy. We have always thrived on trade. And secondly, because Hong Kong has many local Chinese who are scions of overseas Chinese. Myself, for example, I'm half Singaporean. The co-founder of Maritime Silk Road Society, Mr. Bernard Chan, is well known to be a prominent Thai Chinese, And we have lots of families here who have strong connections with Southeast Asia. And many Southeast Asian families who own big businesses, they have branches in Hong Kong. They have cousins, descendants in Hong Kong, and we have a lot of enterprises with close connections to Southeast Asia, including many of the sponsors here. So Hong Kong is well placed to do business with countries along the Maritime Silk Road, and in particular in linking up hearts and minds. Because in Southeast Asia, there are a lot of Chiu-Chao-ese, Fujianese, Hakka Chinese, all over from southern China, Chinese people who are part of the Chinese diaspora of the late Qing dynasty. So Hong Kong is well placed not only to do business networking, but also in helping hearts and minds link up with each other. But I think we need to do a lot more to educate our young people about the significance of the Belt and Road. I think it really is an ingenious concept, linking China's past with the present and the future. The Silk Road is one of the world's oldest brand, and the founder of this brand, no doubt, is China. So I think we are on the cusp of a rising era, of a new wave of globalization spearheaded by the Belt and Road. And I look forward to Hong Kong playing an increasingly important role in fostering greater links with the other countries, developed or less developed, along the Belt and Road.
Thank you. I think Mrs. Yip had already proposed that Hong Kong will face the challenge. The second speaker is Paul McComb from the Consulate-General of Britain in Hong Kong. Britain is now one of the longest routes of Silk Road between China and Europe. So this will put you in a very special position.
Indeed. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Joseph, and thank you, China Daily, for inviting me to your wonderful conference today. Just to clarify, the end of the Silk Road is in a place called Macclesfield in the northwest of England. So I know I've seen many charts that have been drawn, but I just thought I'd correct that. And there is a silk museum, and President Xi Jinping wanted to visit that museum, so it's definitely on the map. I'm pleased in a way you mentioned education and people's understanding. I have been in Hong Kong for about a year. I was excited coming out to Hong Kong, having spent the last couple of years setting up the new international trade department in the UK, to find out really what is Belt and Road on the ground. And I got here and I turned to the team and I said, "Where's the plan?" And everyone looked blank at me and said, "Well, it's more than that. It's an idea, it's a concept, it's a belief." And in fact, actually, you're right, Regina. One of the biggest challenges is to really separate the big idea and the initiative from how that will manifest itself in very, very different ways in different parts of the world. And one of the things that, and I've spent a lot of my career working in big organizations and leading big organizations. And sometimes when you're faced with something, a concept as big as this, it's actually better, I think, to think while you're doing. So by doing things, you will learn. And when you learn things, then you will think of better ways of doing that. So one of the decisions that we made in the UK very early on was actually we needed some serious senior leadership within the UK to engage with Belt and Road. And we made two very important appointments. The first was a trade minister within our new international trade minister, Baroness Rona Fairhead, who has been out to the Global Summit on Belt and Road. And her job is really to look at the UK offer and the UK capabilities that might be around professional services, banking, financial services, design consultancies, etc., and to say, have we actually looked at where we have got strengths in the UK that could support the many different and varied projects that may emerge? But appointing someone at a political level of that nature is quite a powerful step in a country, because you're saying, we recognise this initiative, we recognise that it will take all sorts of shapes and sizes, but we've got to be ready about what is it that the UK can contribute to an exercise, to an initiative as big as this. The second appointment, I think, which is quite an important one, is Sir Douglas Flint. And Sir Douglas Flint was the chairman of HSBC. He is now the Chancellor of the Exchequer's Special Envoy to Belt and Road. And what Douglas has been looking at is, and you know, there's a bit of distance to go here, but the idea of creating a Belt and Road asset class, where you're starting to look at the establishing criteria for the types of projects, some minimum standards, and that could be everything from governance, political stability in some of these countries, the kind of the risk assessments, etc. But to get to the point where bonds can be issued and finance can be raised, because the thing that was clear to him right at the start of this entire exercise is the sheer scale of ambition and the cost could not be afforded by any one country. It needed a lot of institutional investment as well. And to achieve that, you've got to look at Belt and Road through the eyes of pension fund investors or others, and to try and find the kind of product that would turn this kind of investment community on to invest into that. So I think in the UK we've got the big concept. I think we've made two very important leadership appointments in Baroness Fairhead and Sir Douglas Flint. But we've also gone beyond that and started to look at the projects that are happening now. So I had the pleasure of coming to Joseph's centre and in a bit more detail sharing my views. But the one message I wanted to share with people was, please, tell us more about your projects. Tell us more about what you're trying to do. Let us see how we can get involved and engaged, because only by doing so can we learn. And that learning is not just purely with a commercial eye. It's also because we have set aside within the UK, within our trade finance facility, 25 billion sterling across all of the Belt and Road countries to facilitate some of those projects. So that could be working capital, that could be insurance, that could be lending to the buyer in quite competitive terms. So we are putting money on the table to facilitate this as well. But in order to release that money, then there has to be a reasonable UK content of at least 20%. So I think our perspective is we've got to get on and do things. We've got to learn from the things that we do, but we also need to start to build the environment that enables greater investment into some of the projects in a way that will actually attract the investor community. Because frankly, without the significant funding that will be needed, it's going to be very difficult to see how you get from the big idea down to how it'll materialize on the ground.
Thank you. One of the major projects of Belt and Road is the China-Palestine Economic Corridor. I think it has started for a few years and there's results already seen. So we would like to have Mr. Memon from Consulate-General of Palestine to tell us more about the actual situation and the future trends. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. First of all, I would like to thank China Daily and Silk Road Economic Development Research Center for organizing this seminar and inviting me and giving me also an opportunity to speak. Before I talk about Pakistan-China Economic Corridor, I would like to highlight about, because we are one of the biggest in the Belt and Road, we, as a recipient country, what we understand about Belt and Road. For us, as far as we know, it's more like a brand. And as Paul has said, it's a vision. If there is a blueprint or if there's a roadmap of Belt and Road, we are not aware of it. But we believe that it's a brand and it's still evolving. As today we learned that from 69, now there are 72 or 74 countries who have already signed Belt and Road agreements with mainland China. So our journey on the Belt and Road started in 2013 when President Xi Jinping visited Pakistan, and where we signed the agreement, and we are very fortunate that we are part of the Belt and Road. For us, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is not just investing on infrastructure. or developing ports or airports. For us, it's economic development collaboration, which would, we believe, benefit Pakistan as well as People's Republic of China. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is also called as the flagship of Belt and Road, it plans to connect the western region of China with the deep sea port of Gwadar. Pakistan has given transit rights to People's Republic of China to use its territory for trade with the rest of the world through the ports of Pakistan. We believe that, of course, for Pakistan, it's going to bring a lot of infrastructure investments. It's going to have trickle-down effect on our economy. But we also believe that it is going to enhance the global competitiveness of China. Right now, China is predominantly relying on South China Sea, as we know that 80% of China's global trade, including around 85% of its energy needs, passes through a narrow strait, the Malacca Strait, in the South China Sea. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is going to provide an option to People's Republic of China to use the territory of Pakistan by passing South China Sea. And according to our estimates, if the ship sails from Middle East and goes to the eastern ports of China through South China Sea, it takes 45 days. And if the same cargo is transited through territory of Pakistan, it takes 10 days. Now we understand that when the journey time reduces from 45 days to 10 days, it enhances the competitiveness of the goods. So Pakistan-China Economic Corridor consists of three main modes of connectivity. One is the road, the other is the railway. So there is, the road is fully operational. I undertook that journey from the deep sea port of Gwadar to Kashgar city by road. It took me 9 days. Of course, the paper says it takes 10 days, but I was able to reach Kashgar from Gwadar within 9 days. The second phase is this road is actually working. I saw a lot of Chinese goods entering from Kashgar to Pakistan and going all the way through Gwadar, and those goods were destined for Middle East, Africa, and east coast of United States. The second phase of connectivity is the railways, which is also in the process, and I think in the next 4 years the project will be completed. And the third mode of connectivity is the oil pipeline from the deep sea port of Gwadar going all the way to Kashgar. So once we envisage all these projects to be operational by 2025. Belt and Road projects have already had good impact on our economy. Last year, our GDP growth was 5.3%. This year, we are expected 5.8 to 6, and Pakistan would be, I think, the third or second fastest growing economy in the world, because thanks to Belt and Road investments. For us, of course, we have also a new government in Pakistan. Our Prime Minister will be visiting Beijing and Shanghai early this next month, and it will be Prime Minister's first visit, official visit after assuming office, and we are giving high importance to that visit, and I think it's further going to strengthen our bonds of friendship. As far as Hong Kong is concerned, we have a sizable community here. In fact, the history of Pakistanis living in Hong Kong is as old as history of Hong Kong. When the Britishers colonized, they brought, because we were also part of the British colony then, so they brought us here to support. But when we see Hong Kong and Belt and Road, because I'm just talking about Pakistan, I don't know about what in other countries is happening. We don't see any footprint of Hong Kong in the Belt and Road projects. Of course, the companies that are working on the Belt and Road projects are mainland businesses. they have some links in Hong Kong, but we don't see any Hong Kong businesses working in Pakistan. It gives me a lot of pain because I think Hong Kong has the potential. But what I believe is there is lack of understanding. Of course, a lot of people are talking about Belt and Road, especially in the private sector. I believe, as far as Pakistan is concerned, I may be wrong, there is still not much clarity what is the role of Hong Kong. And I'm grateful to China Daily and the Silk Road Research Development Society. I think events like this can highlight the importance of Hong Kong, can educate, and I think we have to do more efforts like this to educate the Hong Kong businesses, because there are tremendous opportunities lying out there. So that still, we say the party has not ended, the party has just started. So, of course, I'll be available to take any questions, and I'll give opportunity to my other colleagues to also speak. Thank you.
Thank you. We shall return to the role of Hong Kong later in our discussion sessions. For the Belt and Road, there's also important regions, Africa. And East Africa have been a major focus of China's investment and also trade. And we all know that Africa will be the next economic giant in the world because of the population increase in the coming years. So we would like to hear from Mr. Mutiwazuka from the Consulate-General of Zimbabwe, please.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. And I also want to add my voice to colleagues who have acknowledged the fact that the China Daily and other sponsors have invited us to this event. My initial remark is that when I saw the video played by Joseph Chan, and they were asking the people in Hong Kong about their views on BRA, it also took me back to Africa, and I said to myself, suppose the newsman was in Africa and asking African people whether they knew the BRA. I think most of the African people do not know what BRI is, but what they know is that China has got big, massive projects in Africa. It's not about the name, it's more about the investment. This leads me to my presentation. I have 3 issues which I want to share with this gathering. The first one, my perspective on the Belt and Road Initiative. And the second one, I'll also highlight the specific projects which have been undertaken by the BRA. And the third one, it will be about the unique role in which Hong Kong can play in the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa. The People's Republic of China and Africa have been growing ties under the Belt and Road Initiative in so many sectors. But I want to mention energy sector, agriculture, trade and investment. To put this into proper perspective and also to illustrate in terms of statistics, Chinese investment into Africa has grown by 40% every year, from approximately US $1 billion in 2004 to over 68 billion in 2016. The import and export value of China-Africa trade has grown from a mere US $10 billion in 2000 to over 170 billion last year. China has also extended more than US 110 billion in commercial loans to African governments and state-owned companies between 2000 and 2017 at an average of about US 6 billion a year. A recent study by McKinsey pointed out that there are more than 10,000 Chinese firms operating in the African continent in such sectors as manufacturing, retail, and mining. It is also worth noting that China is now Africa's biggest creditor, investor, and economic partner at the expense of the US and EU. The second point which I want to bring out in this conference are the projects which underlie the BRI in Africa. As I already stated, Africa is witnessing rapid modernization through investment in infrastructure projects and what President Xi has termed a real win-win cooperation. China is committed to grow the following sectors: industry, agriculture, trade and investment, reduction of poverty, public health, people-to-people exchanges, peace and security. These are enablers to the economic development of our countries in Africa. The other Belt and Road investments also include aviation, railways, high-speed train network, and energy sectors. In my own country, Zimbabwe, we have benefited from Chinese-funded projects, notably the recent completion of $150 million on the expansion of the Victoria Falls International Airport. In the energy sector, China's Sino-Hydro has also expanded the Kariba South Power Plant at a cost of US $533 million, which has added about 300 megawatts to our national grid, thus supporting our electricity requirements. In our agricultural sector, the Chinese market is the largest consumer of our flue-cured tobacco, with over $200 million worth of trade last year. Continent-wide, the BRI is most significant in East Africa. African countries such as Ethiopia, Djibouti, Angola, Kenya, Zambia, and Egypt are so far the main focus of BRI investments in Africa. Of note is the recently commissioned US $6.3 billion Nairobi-Mombasa Railway in Kenya, but this will eventually run through Rwanda and Uganda and possibly beyond. This has certainly promoted inter-regional trade amongst landlocked countries of Uganda, Rwanda, and DRC, as this has integrated the economies in the COMESA bloc. Private companies have also grabbed an opportunity to build industrial parks and other privately owned businesses along the new railway line. Currently, there are over 30 China-invested industrial parks in Africa, and 70 more are also being built in different parts of the continent, which is an indication of accelerated development. Of course, we have heard some negative perceptions about Chinese investments in Africa. Some say they only benefit the Chinese, but it is also worth noting that local economies have also grown. Jobs have been created, technology and skills have been transferred to the benefit of most African economies and people. For example, in Zimbabwe, my country, the Chinese are key partners in our tobacco industry. They have managed to partner tobacco farmers, and this has created more jobs, and also they've managed to grow more tobacco, and the output as of last year was about 237 million kilograms of tobacco, which is mostly exported to this part of the world. We also have the presence of Chinese multinational companies such as Huawei, Yutong, Lenovo, ZTE, Shinta Electric, and Hisense, which have partnered our own local companies, thus bringing in these technological developments in my country. The third point, which I want to share with you, is how Hong Kong can play a role in the Belt and Road with respect to Africa. It would be foolhardy for anybody to think that China alone can fund the entire BRI. It is that imperative that the private sector also plays its role, and it is therefore not surprising that we are witnessing more and more private companies also investing in Belt and Road countries. This is where I think Hong Kong could be central to such private-public partnerships. As a super connector and Asia's financial hub, Hong Kong possesses the requisite human resources and private equity funds needed to augment mainland China's investments in Africa. Infrastructure projects, by their nature, take years to give returns, and therefore it's normally a hard sell to private capital, but I strongly believe that Hong Kong could fill that gap by coming up with innovative ways of funding infrastructure projects. This assertion stems from the fact that Hong Kong has enormous expertise in legal and other professional services, accounting, engineering, ITC, and other international talent, as already mentioned by previous speakers. These are all necessary for successful trade within the Belt and Road. Hong Kong can also play a middleman role as a gateway to most of Africa's exports. We have a lot of fruits in Africa, seafood, coffee, cotton, tobacco, which can come via Hong Kong to other countries in the Belt and Road region. In conclusion, let me point out that the BRI has indeed created business opportunities in Africa for private sector players, local governments, and even individuals from both China and Africa. I'm of the view that Hong Kong business people can also come aboard. I'm also of the view that BRI is a new model of development, which is in contrast to other investment models which have largely been ineffective in Africa. I want to emphasize that we believe this is a new model of development because it's a win-win situation. As I've already stated, infrastructure projects do take years to yield returns, and I believe that BRI investments will be time well spent in Africa. I thank you.
Thank you. I think Southeast Asia have been very close to China and Hong Kong and the Great Bay Area. Mrs. Yip has a family there, and I think most of us have some social ties with Southeast Asian countries. But we do not know one thing is, that could be more important for Hong Kong in the future is that not only ASEAN countries become a major trading and economic cooperation partner with Hong Kong, but also I think Malaysia, for example, can help Hong Kong to link up with Middle East. Not just for the Islamic finance, but rather the Middle East, the Islamic world as well. So we would like to hear from Mr. Sirajuzzaman from the Malaysian Consulate about all these kind of possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, China Daily, and also the Silk Road Economic Development Research Center for giving us a chance to speak on the panel. I think I would like to start, you were mentioning families having in Southeast Asia and everything. I would like to share a personal story. My grandfather, my British grandfather, maternal grandfather, used to work in Hong Kong 100 years ago. So my family has a personal affinity to Hong Kong. He worked in Hong Kong and in Shanghai, laying underwater telegraph cables. Last time they used telegraph, 100 years ago. So my affinity with Hong Kong is more than my 4-year stay here. And also this is also a reflection of the Belt and Road historically, that Malaysia has been strategically placed in the Belt and Road since China a long time ago, with the Straits of Malacca connecting South China Sea and Indian Ocean on the other side, which is a main trade route, maritime trade route. So Malaysia now is a major trading nation. In January to September this year, our trade with Hong Kong increased by 71.4% to 167 million, placing us as the number 8 trading partner for Hong Kong. So this shows how Malaysia is a trading nation and very well connected to Hong Kong in this matter. Most of the trade re-export is obviously into China, and this is always been the case with Malaysia as a trading nation. Hong Kong is a very important partner going to China, and obviously Malaysia would lend its expertise and know-how to go for Hong Kong to go into the Middle East, and of course with our ASEAN partners also on a larger scale, not as large as the Greater Bay Area, but ASEAN as a whole has a 650 million people market. So that is quite important. And also my reflection on Belt and Road is quite a number. After our election, the new government, a few of the government members have came here. Our Minister of Finance was here in this very hotel. Our then he wasn't the MP yet, but now he's the Member of Parliament for Port Dickson, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim was here in giving a talk in Hong Kong 1 month ago. Our Deputy Defence Minister gave a talk in the Foreign Correspondent Club recently. And then high-level visits to China has already started. Our Prime Minister has been to Beijing and also visiting part of China to continue on our relation, to show the continuation of our relations. Apart from these high-level visits, our new Member of Parliament, Dr. Seri Anwar Ibrahim, was just in Beijing, and he met with the Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who welcomed him. Our another Member of Parliament, Lim Kit Siang, with his Democratic Action Party, visited China also with his. So this is a very important people-to-people relations that is continuing in this Belt and Road initiative. This is for me to show that the Belt and Road people always think about projects, infrastructure. I want to show that it has a human element, which is also important. Relationship between the countries, between the Belt and Road is can be continued with this. I just want to share this facet of Belt and Road. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Since late last year, there's some new development that China is working with Myanmar government on the China-Myanmar economic corridor. And lately, I think they agreed to build a railway from the border to Mandalay. So already there's a very strong trade between China and Myanmar. I think maybe this new initiative from the Chinese and the Myanmar government may push further not only the trade relationship between the two countries, but also there will be other economic impact on the region. So we will ask Mrs. Tan from the Myanmar Consulate-General to enlighten us about the new development.
Thank you very much, Professor Chan. I also like to thanks to Secretary General Excellency Mr. Alimot and Joseph, and organizer China Daily, for giving us opportunity to share our views and our information for the better understanding of cooperation and Belt and Road Initiative. My presentation will be focusing on the establishment of Myanmar-China Economic Corridor, which will become a part of Belt and Road Initiative. I think many of you might have heard so much about it. And then I'd also like to highlight a little bit about our importance of Myanmar-Hong Kong relations, and which will be very important part of to cooperate and to become a trilateral cooperation to implement our corridor. Myanmar and China has strengthened the unique ties of powerful relations in history. We also elaborated the comprehensive cooperative strategic partnership for nearly 2 decades. And China also constantly stands for the major trading partner, our largest trading partner, as well as the biggest investor for over a decade. So these are the very important of how China-Myanmar relations. And then the most significant of our relation is frequent exchange of visit and meeting between the 2 leaders. Our State Consular and President Xi have met 4 times in 2 years, and many of our state leaders and leaders of the Communist Party, as well as the leaders of NPC and CPPCC visited Myanmar very frequently. Due to the geographical advantage, Myanmar has become an important part of Belt and Road Initiative. And we also affirm our support to Belt and Road Initiative by signing the MOU in 2017 May. And then after signing the MOU, I would like to highlight some significant measures undertaken by the Myanmar government in terms of jointly building the Belt and Road Initiative. Firstly, Myanmar was one of the founding members of AIIB, together with the 37 members in late 2015. Secondly, State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi attended the Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation held in Beijing in May 2017, together with the other 29 foreign heads of states and heads of government. And thirdly, Myanmar government has established the Belt and Road Implementation Steering Committee chaired by the State Councilor, and then bilateral cooperation mechanism will be established to further formulating the cooperation plan. These are the measure undertaken by the Myanmar government. And we also, fourthly, the most important, we have signed the MOU on establishment of the Myanmar-China Economic Corridor in September in Beijing. So this was, this proposal, the corridor, the proposal was made by the State Consular and Foreign Minister Mr. Suk-Yee visited when he visited to Naypyidaw in 2017 in November. The negotiation of the economic corridor was finalized on in the February this year, and the MOU was signed on September 9th of this year in Beijing. The Myanmar-China Economic Corridor will be estimated for 1,700 kilometers long and connected with Kunming, Yuen province, border of Myanmar, then down to pass into the Musa border of China, then down to the central Myanmar, Mandalay, then east to the Japudisi port and west to the commercial city of Yangon. Then the shape of the corridor we can see as reserve Y, reverse Y, and in the Chinese corridor it will be a transition. Along the corridor, there will be tens of $million project, including development, planning, infrastructure, transportation, energy, and border economic zone. So the particular projects we have divided to 5 areas, but the major part is the Japudisi port and special economic zone. It is a key part of the corridor, which will allow to expand the trade link to the world. The another major project was 770-kilometer long oil and gas pipeline from Chaopshu to the Yunnan province, which is already operated 1.5 years ago. It is an alternative route of energy import from the Middle East to avoid the Malacca Strait. The another project was the economic zone between the two borders. We have designated the three area in Myanmar side, which will include the industrial zone and as well as the logistics center. Other connectivity infrastructure along the corridor through the Yunnan province to Yangon and WTC port, there will be railways and highways proposal. And I would like to share with you is the last update information is we have signed the feasibility studies for the construction of Muse to Mandalay Railroad on 23rd October in Yangon between China Railway Yuen Engineering Group and the state-run Myanmar Railways. The efforts will be conducted within 2 years, and then it will run, the railroads will long 432 kilometers, and then it will design to the high speed of 160 kilometers per hour. Another project in Yangon New City development, the area is covered for 30,000 acres land west of Yangon River, which include the housing development and then bridges and energy and then water resources as well, and which will target to alleviate the employment and housing facilities. The another extensive projects are most to come beyond Yangon region, because such as the natural gas offshore, the number block 6 was discovered in the northwest of Irrawaddy. It's near Yangon, down in the to the Irrawaddy Delta, that it was announced by the 22nd September by the Ministry of Electronics and Energy. The basic concept of our implementation, the corridor, is we will prioritize the project, then combine all the project with the complement of our national plan and national railroads and national road networks. So according to, so we have to, all the projects proposal and have to be complemented with our national plan. And I would also like to highlight our relation with Hong Kong, Myanmar. I would say our relation is growing very rapidly. The recent year, the visit of Chief Executive Mrs. Lam to Myanmar last September, and visits of our senior minister Udan to Hong Kong in June and October. The Myanmar participation in Belt and Road Summit in Hong Kong, as well as Hong Kong is number 4 largest investor and major trading partners. These factors reflect the importance of our relations. And moreover, we have offered visa exemption to the Hong Kong tourists to visit Myanmar. It is obvious that we are willingness to welcome more Hong Kong tourists and businesses to Myanmar. So people-to-people bond between Myanmar and Hong Kong also very important aspect. It is agreed by the two leaders meeting last year. Therefore, we are going to expand the tourism, students exchange, capacity buildings, and cultural exchange between our two peoples. Myanmar and Hong Kong have the complement with the geographical location. We have 3 hours away from Hong Kong, and we are practicing common law, and with a favorable principle of one country, two system, which we offer a vital role to the Hong Kong participation in our implementation of economic corridor. So I strongly believe that Hong Kong can play not only in financing infrastructure, also cooperation in the professionals and technology know-how for the implementation of our economic corridor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There seems to be a competition between China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. But I think competition is good. I think it's positive for all this development. And there's a good news about Myanmar is that China is building the railways from the border to Mandalay. But we all know that Japan is also building a railway from Yangon to Mandalay. That means they are cooperating together. Yes. So it's not just competition, but it's also cooperation.
These are the development Japanese projects are also always complement with our, our friends' China project. So I would say it's the upgrading the Mandalay Yangon Railway by the Japanese government also one part of the Belt and Road to economic corridor. So our projects are very complementary.
So we are very glad that Britain joins the BRI and Japan also joins. Besides these official views, we would like to have some sort of informal view from our youngster. I think the future is the youngster, so you can present us your view that represent the future. So we have Master Jenkin Yuen from the Yuen College in Hong Kong.
Okay, before I'd like to continue, I'd like to thank all the previous worthy speakers and panelists for their useful information, and thank the organizers, China Daily, Mr. Joseph Chan, for offering me such an opportunity to speak here for our generation as the students regarding the Belt and Road Initiative. So to respond the claim that these previous panelists talked about, I'd like to talk about the education, like the problem of education that is actually lacking in Hong Kong in the status quo now. And so, for example, Mr. Abdul Qadir Memon, so you said that in Pakistan, right? You noticed that there were no developments and no projects or any footprints from Hong Kong in this country regarding the Belt and Road Initiative. And for me, as a student here, I believe that the major reason behind such a lacking footprint in Pakistan from Hong Kong development or Hong Kong firms is because Hong Kong actually doesn't have much understanding in this initiative, and that Hong Kong business persons may not be that aware of the initiative as other countries or firms do. So as Mrs. Regina Ip also told us that young people nowadays in Hong Kong still don't know much about the initiative, and this is exactly what I address as a problem here in Hong Kong, because for example, Mr. Mutiwazuka also told us that Hong Kong can act as a connector and a financial hub or center for the development of the BRI, and Hong Kong can also be an entrepot handling exports from different BRI countries, which means Hong Kong can actually play a very major role in the development of all BRI countries and the link and the bonds of all these countries together. However, the problem we see now in Hong Kong is that there may be a lack of awareness, there may be a lack of contribution from Hong Kong firms or maybe our generation as students about the Belt and Road Initiative? Because from Hong Kong's situation, I don't know whether each of these panelists know or not, but in Hong Kong's situation, in Hong Kong's educational curriculum, there actually isn't anything about Belt and Road Initiative that is taught in our curriculum or syllabus. Because, for example, I brought like 3 of my classmates here. If you ask them what BRI actually is, they may not accurately tell you the answer, because they can only know about the information through reading newspapers, through listening to the news reports, but they actually don't know much about the BRI. But as I said already, Hong Kong actually plays a very important role, no matter at the present or in the future. So actually it is very substantial and significant that we, like this generation as the students now, need to sustain Hong Kong's major role in the whole Belt and Road Initiative, which is why I believe that it is a very major and crucial thing that Hong Kong or maybe any other countries here as well actually have to educate the next generation, because they can actually be, they are actually those people who will sustain this kind of initiative internationally. And so now I've explained why it is important that the next generation of Hong Kong or even many other countries is actually important. Then onto the very major thing is that like how we can actually educate these like our generation. Like for example, even the chief executive, Mrs. Carrie Lam, also told us in reports that the Hong Kong community is still largely skeptical of the Belt and Road Initiative due to a lack of understanding. And as previous worthy panelists also talked about the importance of not only about the businesses, not only about infrastructural projects, but also something that is important is the people-to-people links and bond, right? Because the cultural links, the cultural bonds between each of these countries are very important also, as previous panelists also stressed on. So I believe that we as a Hong Kong generation, future generation, need to strengthen our role as a hub for labor, professional services, logistics, capital, and information flows. And it is pleasing to see the next administration allocating more resources to research and development, youth education, and skills training. So about how we can achieve an education to make people in Hong Kong, to make the next generation in Hong Kong be more like foster such kind of people-to-people links, is that transnational education, like educational exchanges of students and schools, may actually be the key or the solution for these different countries, students and schools to sustain the whole project decades later. For example, there's a gradual trend now that schools or educational organizations from different countries that are along the Belt and Road are organizing school exchanges and visitation trips to other countries along the road to learn more about the culture of these countries and to nurture the people-to-people links, etc. However, under the status now in these countries, as a student here, I believe that the number of exchanges or trips may still be insufficient to boost the knowledge of our generation towards the Belt and Road project. Why is that? So, as a student here from Hong Kong, I suggest that maybe each of us, like every of these countries along the road, should actually start from the fundamentals, which is education, like to educate these business persons, to educate the next generation, so as to sustain the whole project. And because there are many projects in different countries that shows the sustainability between each of these countries in the BRI. However, what is lacking now in the society is that such a sustainability may not be carried out in the future decades later, because as already said repeatedly, like students in many countries here, like in Hong Kong and other countries along the Belt and Road, these students, this generation actually does not know much about the Belt and Road, and that it is actually too late to educate them when they grow up as an adult, right? And therefore, I think that as a student, perhaps maybe starting from year 7 or starting from primary schools, they can actually be educated by the government in order to sustain the development of the initiative. And what we all can do may be to encourage more schools to hold more such kind of exchanges to fathom the culture of other different countries. Or even more simple, governments can incorporate information of Silk Road and the Belt and Road Initiative in the current education curriculum to allow all students, or at least most of the students, to learn about this at their young stage so as to sustain that in the future. So through these policies or actions internally within these countries or cities, we can all make the initiative possible, like more possible in future decades and more sustainable by initiating educations in different countries. So generally, this is my viewpoint about the sustaining problem and the education problem of the generation now.
Thank you. You have made a very strong recommendation, so I think we need our political leaders to respond to it. Because you are representing the political arena.
I've been trying my best to help raise awareness. I think the lack of understanding may be due to the fact that about only 6,000 secondary students in Hong Kong take Chinese history as a subject. So some of them, many of our young people might not have heard of the historic Silk Road, let alone the modern Belt and Road, which is a great pity, you know. But my small organization, we have launched internship program for undergraduates, sending students to destinations as far away as Djibouti in East Africa and Hambantota in Sri Lanka to do summer internship for corporations, you know. So I hope we could work together to help more young people understand the significance of this project. About Hong Kong's contribution, it is true that, as we've heard from the Consul-General of Pakistan and Myanmar, at the initial stage, all the projects are mega infrastructure projects, which make it hard for Hong Kong to take part because over 95% of our businesses are SMEs, you know. But we do have specialized services to offer other than finance, you know. We can offer arbitration services, and also we have insurance experts in Hong Kong who can offer risk insurance, you know. Several of our panelists talk about change of government and the need for renegotiations. We actually have insurance experts who can provide insurance covers for all sorts of risks associated with this sort of mega projects. So I think in due course, Hong Kong will be able to participate other than in finance and in technology, but in also other niche areas.
At two levels, Hong Kong operate. One is those high rank business services, financial and all this. But at the same time, Hong Kong has a very large SME. I think the society and the economy is sustained not just by those professionals, but also by the SME. Both work together. So I would like to ask our foreign guests about how Hong Kong collaborate with you, with your country, on this, either on this level or the other level. For example, in London, I think there's a competition between Hong Kong and London to serve as an offshore financial center for renminbi. But I think London has a much stronger advantages. So how could you help us, Hong Kong, our financial sector, to gear to the BRI?
So, could I make one comment first, and then I'll come to your specific. actually, if you reflect on today, in some of the contributions we've had earlier, people were able to tell a really powerful story about the growth of the Greater Bay Area and of Shenzhen, and they were also able to tell the contribution that Hong Kong made to that, and people talked about moving manufacturing into Shenzhen and keeping some of the services here. And actually, one of the challenges, I think, with telling the Belt and Road story is until you get to the Myanmar story, until you get to the Pakistan story, it's very difficult to bring to life. So one of the things that Hong Kong probably should think about first is 30 years down the road, what is the story Hong Kong wants to tell about its role and its contribution to the Belt and Road in these different parts of the world. So that is what brings education to life, is not just the idea, but also things that have happened. But turning to your question around UK and Hong Kong, actually, we've done a huge amount together. As you know, the UK are a very liberal, open market. We have I think, the biggest offshore renminbi centre outside mainland China. We have the biggest Islamic finance outside of non-Muslim countries. So the UK is very forward-looking and very forward-leaning in terms of adopting and facilitating the kind of financial instruments that make probably London's economy, particularly, and Hong Kong's tick. We also have liberated a lot of the regulations to facilitate things like fintech, trade finance, which again are big facilitators of what will help make some success out of some of these projects. You mentioned marine before, and it's Arbitration Week in Hong Kong, of which marine is a big part. You've got Marine Week coming up in 2 weeks. You've got FinTech this week, and you've got a strong delegation from the UK to every single one of those events. At a governmental level, both the Hong Kong SAR and the UK government issued a statement in March of this year, committing across a number of sectors, both in innovation, Belt and Road, etc., where we would collaborate, and we've signed agreements to that effect. So there's a governmental ambition to share, and then at a practical level, there are business-to-business sharing going on all of the time.
Thank you. I think I'm not managing the panel well. We have overrun and it's time for the lunch. So thank you very much for all the distinguished speakers in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for the insights.